everybody. Welcome to Where's Your Next on this Monday, the 6th of May. And there's a lot going on. I think had a lot of discussions in the last few weeks. Had a really good conversation with Dermot O'Brien the other day, the former CHRO of ADP. And he gave some great advice that I think was relevant right now. And so Paul Bagan, my good friend, is here with me today. I had a couple solo episodes as well. I talked about job search psychology. I talked about last week a little bit about continuing to stay the course when things seem hard, right? I think and when it comes to careers, I'll be the first to tell you, this is the first time in my career I've had an elongated job search, okay? And I think, with that said, it doesn't mean I'm not doing anything right now. I'm staying busy with a few activities. I've been invited to speak at several conferences. I've been on some webinars. I've been staying adept with Sourcing Owls, signed up for that and continuing to source on there. Been on that platform for about 2 months and had a couple submittals. We'll see if I get, how it goes. You only get paid if you make the placement, but that's okay. It's keeping my skills sharp. Found a couple of really good candidates that way. So here we are in 2024. And I think one of the first things I want to kind of talk about today is I put a post out there on LinkedIn the other day, and I was basically talking about taking risks. So let me kind of walk you through that, because I had my first HR director. Her name was Judy Wallace. And so I want to extend on this topic because I talked about this last week, taking risks about, strategic moves in your career, even though they may be uncomfortable or you're not sure exactly where they're headed. And I'll admit, I took a couple risks because I'd been at ADP for 9 years. And in 2021, the environment seemed like a good time to make a move because everything was gangbusters, everything was busy, everything was going fast and furious. But as we found out in the past, maybe year, 6 months or so, maybe even year and a half, a lot of these companies overhired. And so we're finding a unique situation where if you're in HR or recruiting, you're basically running up to a lot of competition, fewer roles, a lot of different nuances that make this market a little bit more interesting. And I'll be honest, it's the first time in my career I've ever been hunting for as long as I have. So it's a little bit I've had a lot of close calls. I had a couple offers, but upon talking it over with my wife and pondering, she said, hold out a little longer. We need to make sure you're on the right track in your career and doing the right thing. I would have taken a role that would have been paid $26 an hour. Wasn't quite the right fit for me. So have to take a look carefully and make good moves. And once I commit to an employer, I commit, and I'm just ethical that way. So I put out a post just this last week, and I want to just walk through. This will be the primer for Paul and my discussion today as we go forward. But let me read this. So going back to what I was talking about a minute ago, in my 3-year career journey since 9 years at ADP, I intentionally got out of my comfort zone. And I'm referring to a quote by John C. Maxwell, who's the leadership guru. If we are growing, we are always going to be outside our comfort zone. And John C. Maxwell is right. It's so important in your career not to get comfortable and to continue to grow. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck and you're going to be in a place where you plateau. And, I would rather be out taking risks and continuing to grow than not. So let me continue to read. Growth and adaptation is entirely connected to your growth in value. In other words, when you go out and you gain new skills and you're out there learning and growing, your growth in value also increases directly into the amount of time you spend on trying to grow. And that may mean taking a couple of uncomfortable, moves, which means my vision of my career options has been enhanced. Today, via Where's Your Next, we'll talk about taking your value proposition across all avenues of opportunity when you're evaluating your next move. And furthermore, how you influence circumstances for change that enhance everything you do. In other words, continuing to gain those experiences and not being afraid of taking risks to keep growing. Keep growing intentionally, even if it means taking calculated risks. We'll also talk about taking ownership of the candidate experience. Now, candidate experience, I will be honest, has suffered to some degree with recruiters. especially being on the front line and looking for work right now. There was an estimate from one of my friends, and he thinks that there's about 15% unemployment rate for recruiters right now, where that's a very interesting number, but it's a lot. Okay, so 15%. Think about that for a minute. About a year and a half ago, it was going, gangbusters. Things were boom, boom, boom. Everything was going rapid fire. And in my discussion on a podcast with Kevin Grossman last week, who, if you don't know who he is, he's an advocate for candidate experience. And one of the things that he talked about in our vlogcast, was continuing to get back to candidates and have the human element, which to me, and in this time of artificial intelligence, recruiters and staffing professionals need to be on the front line of continuing to give good candidate experience, no matter what happens. So with that said, let's dive into the topic today. Paul, I wanted to get your opinion on a couple of things. So let me ask you this question. As one of my mentors and now my co-host, what is it about continuing to gain experience in a landscape where risk taking can, put you in a situation like me, where you might be in a place for 6 months where you're trying to make that next move, and things are hard, where you've got lots more competition than ever before in a place I've never seen before. Honestly, what do you think?
Well, I'd say that today's employers, they have a new mindset. Well, I wouldn't say it's a new mindset. It's been around now for a while, but go way back to the ancient dinosaur era that I'm part of. And it used to be, hey, you know what? All you need to do is land your first job, then you'll gain all your experience and you're good to go, because you'll be with Honeywell or IBM or any one of the big companies. Now that is not the mindset. The mindset is how much outside of the needed education, how much experience do they have with other companies? It used to be frowned upon. Now it's like it's frowned upon if you're not jumping a job every year and a half. And why employers are wanting that, as I've talked to people in HR, and I've not gotten the kind of answer I want to hear, because it just doesn't make sense to me. They're just saying that they want people to get as much experience from other companies so they can bring it to their new company. Then their new company can get all the experience and skills from them. Now, this is a little bit of a hard pill to swallow, but I've seen it, and it's happened to me personally as well. They'll bring you in, and then they suck you dry. They get everything that they need from you. And please don't misunderstand my message. I'm not saying that about every company. So those of you who are listening, you might be right in thinking, oh, not my company. But there's enough of them I've experienced working with everything from small startups to the big Fortune 500 companies, that's what they look for. That's what they sometimes look to do. Why? I think it's so that they can save money. They can hire somebody for a short span of time. That's one of the reasons why I put my coaching hat on for a moment, Mike. That's one of the reasons why I highly encourage people, especially in this job market now, shop your skills as a consultant. And you don't have to call yourself a consultant, but it can do two things. One thing that it does is it shows the employer your level of experience. Number two, the employer can take what they want from you, but not entirely, because you're on a contract with them, and you can have that contract read the way that you want it to read. And that's very important. For example, for myself, I provide, I tell them that my information is proprietary. They can't use it. They can't steal that from me. I've never had to, because I feel I've done a very good job of finding the right types of companies, but I've never had to exercise suing anybody over it. But you have to have that safeguard. That's only one way to do. But I did this with a lot of clients back maybe the last time we were in this situation. And a lot of them did. I said, don't think of it as permanent. Think of it as temporary, but make some money, work your own deal. I mean, I even worked a deal where I got the employer to pick up my health care.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
were,
Yeah. It's a very interesting concept. I think, we're kind of in what we would call a free agency market. Like, for instance, let me give you an example. When I went to ADP back in 2012, and I made that move from 2012 to 2021, I was promoted 3 times. And my network at ADP has come in handy, very much so. Like, they continue to have my back. Um, Quite frankly, they told me if they had an opening, they'd hire me back. So it was like I remember when I told my old boss and I said what I was doing, that I needed to go gain experience in X, Y, and Z. That I needed international recruiting experience. I knew I needed that. I knew that I'd have the opportunity to take part in a recruiting system ATS implementation, right? I knew I'd have that opportunity at the LDS church, right? I took that advantage of that because it was an opportunity. So I didn't know how long I'd stay. I knew that I didn't want to get pigeonholed into nonprofit for the rest of my life. So that was a concern when I took that risk. But I'm going back again to the times when I was an intern, and I just always remember this voice echoes in my head every day. Every day, it's Judy Wallace, my old HR director, who basically said, no matter what happens in your career, and you're going to see a lot of changes, and the economy and everything's going to shift. You're going to see a wide variety of things happen in your time, but don't be afraid to take a risk. Don't be afraid to take a move, to gain experience and skills. And so I did. I went after 9 years and I was comfortable. I had stability. I knew if I wanted to, I could probably retire with ADP. And I look back on it. Sometimes I wonder myself, oh, if I hadn't made that move, I wouldn't be in this 5-month jaunt where I'm trying to figure out, this middle period of what's going to happen and how am I going to do this, but somehow my family and I are making it, gig economy. Thank goodness for it. I can go out and I can earn there's consulting right there. I'm doing this sourcing owls thing and I'm learning how to be a consultant with my own skill set. I'm, I'm reaching out to employers using my sourcing skills. I'm finding their contact information. I'm getting ahead of the curve and reaching the decision makers directly. Whereas they may not have an opportunity right now, but I'm putting myself on their radar for the future. And what's interesting about that is because of that boldness, because I've been reaching out proactively, I'm actually getting contacts. I actually have a couple of conversations this week as a result of that. And they don't have any openings yet. One of them may, but we'll see. Maybe I wind up landing in the ecosystem supporting the recruiting technology side of things. And I'm going to try that angle because if you're in recruiting and HR, there's two things, right? There's an HR ecosystem. I worked at ADP, the largest HCM provider in the world. Why not try to go and work as a solutions consultant or technology vendor, for HR and payroll systems? I can sell that. I can work with that. I know that space. I was working on some of the product enhancement that ADP did. I also know ATS systems, and I know what to look for there. I could be an implementation consultant or some kind of consultant in that way. So again, enhancing your value beyond the traditional scope. I have Nathan North to thank for putting that in my mind. He's an old friend, and we worked at HR Solutions Partners together right before I went to ADP. And I've worked agency side as well. I've got about 5 years of recruiting agency experience. I wouldn't mind winding up in some kind of an environment for an RPO. So what I'm going to continue to do is reach out to the decision makers in the supporting ecosystem while I look at the top employer lists of my current area here in Utah. Again, had I not taken some of the bold steps that I've taken, I wouldn't have the interviews and the opportunities I have, that any one of which could turn into an offer at some point once budgets get approved, right? So I have to stay on the fighting edge of that. And if it takes another 3 months, God forbid, if it takes that long to land, oh well. I will have kept myself busy. I will have done creative things that are outside the box. I have my other stream of income to keep going. And I have a conference in about a month to go to at Recruit DC. So continually enhancing your value proposition. Isn't that powerful stuff, right? It's exactly what we need to be doing. And, when I went to the source and recruit company, I was wanting to get some business development experience on the side of recruiting. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't, but my old employer gave me a shot and I learned so much from it. But unfortunately, he couldn't invest in my role anymore. So, that's what happened. But he wrote a letter of recommendation and we have a good friendship. And if he has the opportunity to get more business, he might hire me back in some way. So we got to keep going in these times when it seems strange and where things are up in the air and you're not quite sure where the road is headed, right? It's taking risks is okay. And it may be uncomfortable as it is for me right now, but that's okay. Got to keep going.
A key word, Mike, there too, would be taking a calculated strategic risk.
That's right. Yep. That's exactly what happened.
And that's what you've been doing. And it's like anything else. If you know what you're going after and you know your purpose for doing it, then you're going to be cultivating the kind of business that you want to be working with and for. Right now, you're working, the difference between a shotgun and a rifle. Shotgun shoots all over the place. And right now, it's forcing a lot of people in the workplace to be shooting all over the place, just doing whatever they think they can do and taking these crazy risks. But if we do it with a rifle and we shoot with precision, we have a far better chance of landing something that's going to stick.
Right. Yeah. And I was almost debating. I mean, I while I was at ADP, I had the opportunity to work with veterans and do veteran hiring. And I'm going to look at some veteran hiring organizations, ones that specialize in that, and see if I could join them somehow. Because that's a passion of mine, is getting veterans hired. And if I could find a way to just, see, my ideal role is, either on the recruiting or HR technology side, in-house recruiting, sourcing, or HR, or one of these agency side environments where I can be a consultant and maybe help with HR and recruiting consultancy. See, there's a lot of areas there. There's PEOs, professional employer organizations. If you go back to my episode with Dermot, you'll see exactly that. We were talking about all these different options that recruiting and HR professionals have. In other words, where's your next is all about that. I mean, get rid of the imposter syndrome. Don't be afraid. Sometimes, let's talk about imposter syndrome, Paul. What are some of why does that happen? Why is it that people are so afraid to take a risk these days? I mean, maybe it's everything since 2020 and the mental health that we're experiencing. It's like so many issues all at once.
Yeah. I'm going to see if I can't answer that with kind of a quick story. And there's a guy set up an aquarium. And the aquarium, they were allowed to swim freely, the fish. And it was an experiment being done. Then what he did is he divided the aquarium in half. And so now they only had half of the aquarium that they could be swimming in. Now, what happened over here in the other hand is he put in predator fish that would eat these fish. And those fish knew it. So they didn't want to go anywhere, but no risk here. I'm gonna get as far into the corner of this aquarium as I can. Now, what's interesting is that when they removed the predator fish and they removed the glass, the divider glass, where do you think the fish went? There's no more predator fish, but they stayed put. They stayed in the corner of the aquarium because that's where they felt comfortable, apparently, where they felt safe and they would not be attacked. And I feel that that's a big part of it, is every day I'm looking for employment as a consultant, as a coach. And I have allowed myself to want to go into the corner of the aquarium because I started thinking, you know what, those people that I'm going to call, uh,
Hmm.
they're going to eat me alive. They're going to hurt me. Now, why would I even think that? Think about it. Why would anybody think that that has experience, especially now with my level of experience of nearly 40 years of working with individuals, corporations, well, at all levels of corporations? Why am I going to be worried? I know what they're looking for, but it's going back to it's that feeling. Now, you add another ingredient to that, and that is that we've had COVID happen to us. We've got a crazy political climate right now. Not talking politics, just saying we have a crazy politics right now. That's weighing on people. We've got things that are happening over in the Middle East. So this causes now companies to want to back off and they go into the corner of their aquarium. I don't want to be hurt. I don't
Hmm.
want to extend. I don't want to lose a huge contract. Some even say, I don't want. I talked to one, he says, I'd love to get a huge contract. I don't have the infrastructure for it right now. So if I took on a bigger contract, I
Yeah.
don't know if he could ramp up fast enough. I'm sure he could, but it's the mindset.
Yep. That's a really good way of putting it. And, I think that's, I love that because what you're basically talking about is the comfort zone once again, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And this is where it gets interesting because I think with all these things that have happened, you know, someone at some point is going to say, if I keep up this numbers game of continuing to apply, continuing to work hard, continuing to hustle, try to make things happen, I'll get that one moment where someone says, you know what, you're hired, and you're going to be so dang close. Like I've had, I mean, so let's talk about candidate experience for a moment and how to elevate it. Because if you're in a job seeking venture, one of the things, the biggest gift that you could give an employer is feedback in their process. If you were treated well, tell them that. Let them know that you really appreciated the effort to really show humanity. And I want to. I mean, I had one that did just that recently, and I don't know if I would have their permission to share the story, but I'll at least say what happened. So I went to an interview for a role in Salt Lake City, which I really want, and I connected with the HR director on a very good level. The interview was interesting. I mean, it was a 2 hour affair meeting his team, right? And it at about the midway point of the interview, he walks in and he brings some extra water and he looks at me and he goes, "Are you doing all right? You doing okay?" He says, "You can get comfortable. Take off your jacket, take off your suit coat, and just put it on the back of your chair. You don't have to be that formal." But I think he knew that I was trying to put my best foot forward, and I think he really appreciated that. But just it was such a small thing for him to come in and he was checking um, the room temperature for make sure it was cool enough and comfortable. And I mean, I was so grateful. And when you're on the hot seat like that, you're nervous. You're just your instincts are where they are. But I think I handled myself fairly well, and I did fairly well in that interview, right? And today I got the news that one of the prospects that I was hoping for, they had to pull back on their, on their need. But I have to give them props because you know what they did, and they called and closed the loop via phone. You know how rare that is right now in this
That's
market.
very rare.
Yeah, and so to their credit, and I'll give them a shout out. That was Zion's Bank. Zion's Bank did a fantastic job and a really very good structured interview, very good stuff. So I'll give them a shout out. That was a really, really good one. The other one is still in place, so I don't want to kind of give that away yet. Um, but once the loop is closed, I'll give them a shout out as well. And just, I've had some good interviews with some really good people in the last 2 weeks, that are good, solid human beings that made an extra effort to go the distance to close the loop. Now, it just, the fact that they picked up the phone, made a call in an era where it's rare and everything is automated shows the effort to get back to the human element of recruiting, which to me is very powerful. So I am grateful for that. I mean, it's such a small thing, but giving a shout out like that, I think they deserve it. It's, that closure, now that that process is closed, that was a really great experience, even though they were hoping to hire, but they couldn't quite hire yet. And that's okay. Right. But at least they closed the loop. I mean, they could have just left me hanging. I'm really grateful to them for taking that extra effort, and it stands out in a sea of other employers. So,
and if I could just interrupt, one thing I know you do real well, Mike, and we need to reinforce that, is just because they've closed the loop doesn't mean that we forget them. We we find those opportunities down the road, even if we land something where we stay in communications with them. I love using LinkedIn, and I send a lot of messages out that way. Just this morning I did. And, it's just amazing how people seem to appreciate that. And how we know that is because they say, oh, thanks for reaching out. That human element again.
yeah,
It's
I
so
would agree with
important.
that. I think, I think we will definitely stay in contact with them. That's a really good organization. And when they have the need arise again, hopefully I'll be top of mind and I'll keep an eye on their stream, because again, it made me remember that they were just an excellent, really solid organization that cared. And again, it's that client service mentality of recruiting that stands out to me. And that's the other thing. Like that's something I bring as a value add, is the human element, which is so rare now. That would be how I close the loop with everybody. But in the other side of things, when you're networking and you're trying to reach out to people, a phone call is very strategic and it's very powerful as well. We're in a place where I think we need more of that. And the effort to do just that is becoming increasingly important. So no matter what happens, if an employer does close the loop and says, hey, this isn't the right time, or, we hired someone else or whatever, still be gracious and accept that and reach out to them and say thank you. Even a thank you now goes so far. It's such an amazing thing.
It does. I think we also have to be mindful of the fact, though, that a lot of people are really well connected to their cell phones and company issued cell phones. Why I'm bringing it up is because the cell phone has the ability to block calls and you don't
Right.
even know it, won't let it go through. I'm in favor of phone calls, but we have to think in terms of how do I get them to take that call? So that's where creative thinking comes into play. I think about some of the creative things that I've done, uh, and that have paid off. Some that hadn't, but the risk was worth it either way. One of the things that I have suggested to others before is that compose. It can be an email, but emails get lost. How about putting together a letter? Yeah, a letter. And hey, if you want to be real contemporary, use artificial intelligence to structure your letter, but put it out there. And then with, all the things that that they need to know about you to help them. And then say, I will be contacting you. Since they
Yeah.
can block the call anyways, just tell them, say, look, I will be contacting you. Please log my number in. We'll talk for no more than 30 seconds, after which time we'll both know whether or not we need to continue the conversation.
Yeah. There's another interesting idea that's out there. And I think I really love this. And so I actually spoke about this the last couple times on the vlog where I was doing solo. There's a gentleman by the name of David Perry. And again, once again, a shout out because his book is so powerful. What he has come up with is something called the guerrilla marketing for job hunters. It's guerrilla marketing for job hunters 3.0. And the principles of that book are so extensively powerful. one thing he said, I got him on the phone the other day and we had a conversation. And so he suggested something that's been, I mean, the ideas have been building ever since that call. And he suggested trying something like this. Get a box. This is something I really want to try. So get a box, you know, get the mailing address for one of the decision makers, specifically the CEO. Send them this box, but nothing is in the box except for a little piece of paper and an envelope, and it says, "Think outside the box. Look underneath." And that's the only message it says in there. And then you look underneath it, and it has a little QR code, and then the QR code has a video. That when they scan it with their cell phone, it goes to the video of the candidate. Okay, and I have a video that talks about my value add, and it talks about how to get in touch with me. It's 5 minutes long, and it's pretty cool because I was thinking to myself, man, if I could do this just right, I could get a small little box, send it to them, and they have this box, and inside the box is some interesting. Another thing that he's tried and that's actually worked is to send a coffee cup. Okay, and they call it the career coffee cup caper. And what it basically is you send this to several people. And now in Utah, that might have to be, a lot of LDS folk here, so I may not do that. But maybe I could do something like, let's go for a Jamba Juice, or one of the places that's pretty popular, like a Swig, or some kind of one of those little soda shops that they have around here. So they have some of those around. And it's an interesting concept. But basically what you do is you take a cup, and on the bottom of it, you mail the cup with a letter, and you say, here's a cup of X, Y, and Z on me. Would love to meet you for a conversation. And you can put your resume in it, and then send it in the box, and say, let's go have this might be a cup of X that may change your life or may change your business. Let's have a conversation. So there's another way to do it. And there's several ideas like this that are just so bold. And I was thinking about the other day, I was like, how do you stand out in this market? So what I've done is I've created a list of the top employers in Utah. And I'm emailing a few of them and some of the decision makers. And I'm actually getting responses from that effort. But I was thinking to myself, wow, if I took this to another step and I actually mailed the box with this to the top 10 on my list, and then see if any of them come back with a dialogue. And he said, it doesn't hurt to try. So it was just something big and bold, right?
Well, yeah, and extending on that little box thing, I've done those types of things myself, so I can tell you they do work. And thinking outside the box, but adding to that, what you could do, anyone could do, is just get, we all have throwaway watches, things that we don't have anymore, they're broke. So you take like one of these watches. Now, what you could do is you could just shatter the glass on here, mail it with a slip of paper, said, are you running into a lot of broken candidates? Then, if you are, then you can go turn over, and here's your QR code. And we may have, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. You want to use the word we, exclusive, not I may be your solution. It could be, we may be able to work collaboratively.
Yeah.
And then expect a call. That's those things have worked. I opened up a major hospital account that way. I sent little tiny shoes that I found that I ordered on Amazon, and I put one of them in there. Now that I got one foot in the door, I'll call you to see if I can get my other foot in.
Yeah, that's really cool too. Yeah, creativity, yes, and that's the kind of stuff that I think people pay attention to, and they appreciate the creativity, I think. And so there's ways to do that, and I'm just pondering when and how to do that. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, picking up the phone, calling my direct connections, things of that sort right now. That's really what I'm doing. But I have some, opportunities for dialogue with some of my closest contacts as a result of some of these efforts, doing the direct reach outs and so on and so forth, right? And getting creative in that way. And that really is what it takes. I mean, we're in a strange market that it feels like 2008 to some degree, doesn't it?
It does. No question.
And I'm not quite sure why that is. Maybe it's just, the facts that we're dealing with, the overhiring from these tech companies. Again, it's sector driven, right? I think we're dealing with sector driven scenarios that are extremely unique, and we have to kind of, think out of the box, so to speak, like we're talking about.
Yeah.
What other ideas you got?
Well, I had one. Now it left me. Oh my goodness. There's so many different things that we can do though to set ourselves apart from, from our competition. I would say though, the key has been to the success my clients have had, I personally had, it's and what you're doing right now, it's being consistent, staying the course. You can get frustrated at times, but you've got to stay the course because ultimately staying the course is taking you someplace.
Right.
And so coming up, but put together like a game plan. Another thing that we might want to consider is I remember working with a machine shop, and the owner of the machine shop in a very low tech, working in a high tech environment in Silicon Valley. So anything that was suggested that he conceived to be perceived to be high tech, he didn't want to have anything to do with it. So we came up with one he had created at the time. I'll just give it a different name, but we'll call it like the black almond nut. And what he did is he sent out letters to define, we put it together, a defined group of clients that he knew would be receptive to the black almond nut. Just like, we don't go after, right now, healthcare is really good. Tech is down. It might be a little bit more difficult to get people's interest if they're dealing with tech, but not with hospitals. So anyways, went out, he built up the campaign. The first thing was just a note that says the black almond is on its way. Mm-hmm. The next thing he sent out is he says a bag of almond M&Ms, just a small, like fun size. And it said one more time, the black almond is on its way. He wanted to find the chocolate ones. He couldn't, but I said, let's just put it out there. You're branding black almond. So he did that. Then the next thing he wrote was he had trialed this out. This takes time with some of his best customers and got their permission. So he wrote, this did this for me. And your name. So it's a testimony. The black almond did this for me. Mike Rasmussen. Then finally, he sends out the last thing, which is a prototype that he made of the black almond. Mm-hmm. Now, we just didn't know what to expect. And at first, it was slow. It's like, no orders, all this anticipation. We built this up over 3 months. We were thinking maybe that's too long. We said, well, then all of a sudden it just took off because of the last thing that we didn't put in there. And that's what we talk about, taking risks and staying the course. I said, why don't we send one more note out to say, hey, place your order now because the black almonds are backing up. That huge sense of urgency. And it happened. Now, what part of that campaign worked? I'd say all of it did because each phase of it affected somebody differently. And then he just started to get it.
Yeah, and I'm actually in a research step to find a campaign for job search. In a sense, I mean, I have an idea of how to do it, but I've been looking for a specific tool that can help me manage the reach outs and the follow up. So far, I've been managing it by spreadsheets, but I've been on the lookout for a specific tool that can help manage the job search, like a campaign style. So once I find it, I'll share it on Where's Your Next. But I'm on the hunt for one, and I know something's out there that can help with that. It's just a matter of finding it. But once I do, I can automate a lot of my reach out activity and have some follow up and actually do like a business development campaign, which I learned how to do in the last role. So,
Right.
and use some of those skills for what I'm doing. And it's ironic, but every time I've taken the bold step of actually reaching out to a decision maker, and, and I do that enough times, it keeps resulting in conversations, right? I mean, I get all these conversations that, and maybe they don't respond, and it might just mean they don't have anything at the moment, which is okay. But then I just go the next one. I go to the next one. I go to the next one, and it keeps. What I found is I'm at the top of the list when I do that. Truly remarkable.
Absolutely. And it just goes back to using creativity. We can leave voicemail messages. Hi,
Yep.
this is Coach Paul. Call me back. Big deal. But what about, we leave something like, hey, this is Coach Paul. I know I'm reading your mind. You're going, this guy's calling again. But isn't that what you're looking for in a salesperson? One
And
that
in recruiting, someone
and in
who's,
recruiting,
yep, you're
that is,
trying to get someone who's
that,
persistent and
yeah.
keeps after it and goes the extra
Because
mile,
if
right?
you're
Exactly.
looking for a person like that, we'll talk. If you don't want a person like that, that's not persistent, let's respect each other's time. I
Yeah.
used to do this with sales managers, call them up purposely to leave the voicemail message. And the voicemail message worked every time. Said, Mike, is your sales team so productive that you're going over bonus every month that you can't sell anything else anymore? Then a pause. If you answer yes, please hang up. If you're still listening, then you're probably going to have some interest in knowing how to make your team hit their sales goals. That's where you and I working together could come up with something. And
Yep.
I get in there because they call me. They call me and go, I remember to this day, more than one of these sales managers, one of them, she said to me, if I could just get one of my salespeople to leave a message like that, it would be worth every penny I pay you. I said,
Yep.
well, let's not go forward in hiring me yet. Let's see. It's I like all of this so far. So the point I'm trying to make, just to suggest that I've done these things. I've had other clients do these things and do them because hardly anybody does them. So you don't have any competition out there.
The persistence piece
and
of
you're
network.
seeing that, Mike.
Yeah, the persistence piece is the key to the whole thing. So, for instance, I know that I'm close to something. It's just there's this feeling, right? The last go around when I did this, I had 4 or 5 opportunities all kind of converging all at the same time. And then, one lost budget, the other one kind of, fizzled out when, it wasn't the right pay rate. And so I had to say no, unfortunately. The other one, he talked himself out of remote work. And the other one, he had a situation where his leader went with the other candidate, even though the hiring manager wanted to go with me, right? So we've all had these things. If you've been on a job search, this is the most unique one I've ever run into, because usually in my situation, I've always been lucky to have a network contact. But all my network contacts right now are in the same boat. Like, they're all in the same boat. They're not hiring. They're kind of in a wait and see scenario. It's just so odd. Like, if you had looked at this maybe about a year and a half ago, it was gangbusters. People were hiring right and left. There just wasn't enough people. It's the strangest reality I've ever seen. And so I think, we've also been dealing with remote work and people coming back into the office, and these issues are just paramount. This is where what you were talking about before, which is staying the course, is absolutely so critical, because you cannot get down. You can't be letting yourself And I've gone out here to talk about this because I think there's a lot of job seekers feeling this. It's very easy to get discouraged. A lot of even our software engineering friends who had opportunities and money and bonuses and sign-on bonuses and things being thrown at them, all of that is gone. And it's the interview process is longer than it ever used to be. There's just so many strange nuances that were really not there before. And maybe it's because it's the election year. Maybe there's so many pieces to this, but it makes you scratch your head and go, why is this happening? And I think it's a lot of macro level things all converging at the same time. We've got Israel and Hamas going at it. We've got the Ukraine war. We've got inflation that just happened, and the rising of interest rates. So you kind of look at all this stuff, and it feels like 2008 all over again, but for different reasons. It's not quite the Great Recession, but it's still kind of a wait and see. And so it's a little bit of a strange market. So I don't know how to. It's weird to parse it out from that perspective.
I agree, but once again, we got to stay the course. It can get frustrating and tiring to hear it, but you land work that way by staying the course.
Yeah, resiliency is the biggest thing. So right now, as a matter of fact, I've got two opportunities that could materialize. Once it's kind of a wait and see. I know a couple people in my network are kind of holding a spot if it comes, and so that's important. But in the meantime, it's just continuing to plant seeds and keep the conversations going, because eventually those conversations are going to lead right to the promised land of an offer. And that's really what it takes, because and again, I'm wearing my good luck charm today, and I'm wearing the SJSU to kind of open up the week. But my alumni association is my next move. I'm going to start reaching out to people that are in my direct network that are alumni of SJSU, and that's going to be my next play. I'm going to go to my old university and start saying, hey, I'm an SJSU alumnus. I'm reaching out as a fellow Spartan to network. And I know that we've helped each other in the past as alumni, and I would love to have a conversation with a fellow Spartan. Would you be open to that? And it's an amazing thing. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So that's another untapped step. But, well, we thank you for coming today. These were good thoughts. We encourage you, Paul and I, to stay the course and keep going in your job search no matter what you're facing. I will. I know I have to. One of the 3 opportunities is down. I still have 2 in play. So I got to get some more opportunities, get another 3 or 4 in there to really start hopping. But it'll come. Got to be patient. It's very difficult right now. I've never seen anything like this before in my career. It's the first time. And so conversations like this get me back in the game. So I thank Coach Paul for being amazing. And my conversation with Dermot the other day, that was incredible. We've had some really good conversations on our Where's Your Next segments. Soon we'll be creating a podcast for the Where's Your Next platform. And I'm looking forward to that day. We'll get on Spotify. We'll get on some of these other platforms. And we'll definitely have some of our podcasts available to you when the timing's right. It's just going to be, we'll get them one at a time when the timing's right. But in the meantime, we'll continue with our vlogcast every day, every Monday at 12 noon Mountain Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time. And until the next time, we'll see you then. Thank you to Higher Scale for our sponsoring us. And Paul, any parting thoughts before we jump out?
Yeah, make it your mantra. Stay the course.
Absolutely. And always remember, dare to move from Switchfoot too. There we're spot on as well. But yeah, thanks, Paul. And
thank you, Mike.
Just stay on for 1 second. We'll have a post-show conversation. But to everybody else, we'll see you next time.
Next time.